As I'm sure a lot of you already know by now, Nintendo patched Kraken Royale such that if you super jump to it, instead of landing where the Kraken currently is, you land where the player initiated the special from. This is very specifically in place because of a Clam Blitz strategy that involved sending a Kraken under the enemy basket and having every other member of the team jump to the Kraken with power clams and immediately score an uncounterable 60 points. You couldn't even bomb the super jump landings because the Kraken would just eat the bombs. Normally, landing 4 people in the same spot and getting them all splatted would mean the enemy team can counter push, but with Tacticooler being a part of the meta, the Kraken and the jumpers could actually be back most of the way toward mid and ready to defend before that can happen, so there wasn't even that much risk to it. The best you could do was either splat the Kraken user before they ate their super mushroom, or pressure the power clam carriers to the point where it wasn't safe for them to try to super jump. This strategy, known as Kraken cheese, doesn't work as it used to be executed anymore, because part of what made it so reliable was that the Kraken could use its invincibility to reach the basket in spite of the enemy team's defensive formation and still be jumpable when it got there. With that no longer being possible, you have to make a much more honest, vulnerable push to the basket to get people in. So there's a lot more risk involved, and competitive teams are generally capable of shutting that sort of solo play down most of the time. Sure, you could use the Kraken to get to the basket and then jump once the player transforms back, but the Kraken can't eat the bombs that way, and they're very likely to get splatted mid-transformation, possibly denying the jump altogether. As you can see, the jump point stays at the point where the Kraken was initiated until the full transformation animation finishes, so unless they safely get back into normal form, there's no basket jump. If you do manage to sneak into the basket and then pop the Kraken right next to the basket, you can still jump the clams in, and you'd be able to use the Kraken to protect the jumps, but getting there was the hard part of the whole plan to begin with. So the idea has undeniably been substantially nerfed. That said, this also now introduces a new mechanic that's never been in the Splatoon franchise before, to my knowledge. With other specials that leave a landing point behind on the ground, so that's Zipcaster and Inkjet currently, when the special finishes, the player is jumped right back to that landing point. While the player is using the special, the location for teammates to super jump to when they target that player becomes the place they activated the special from. Then, when the special's done, the player lands in exactly the same spot, and they become the super jump target again in the way they usually are. But with Kraken, you can, and almost always do, end up somewhere other than the place you started the special from. It doesn't jump you back to where you initiated the special. So what happens when you super jump to someone whose Kraken ended while they're swimming up a wall? There was a hypothesis early on that you could start Kraken underneath the enemy basket and then cling to a wall and hide somewhere. Since you were on a wall, the thinking went, the game wouldn't update your super jump location from what it was when the Kraken was still active, and for as long as you clung to a wall and didn't let your feet hit the ground, you could keep a super jump spot anywhere you could initiate Kraken indefinitely, say right under the enemy basket. On Flounder Heights, notably, there's a route to cling to a wall continuously, all the way from the enemy basket up to mid, to jump across the gap in mid without touching the ground, and all the way back down to your own side of the map, or wherever else on a wall you wanted to hide. Would this have been good? Maybe less than you'd think. Painting up all the walls I needed for the across-the-map wall cling took a full 2 minutes, and that's with no one trying to stop me. The team attempting this would have to find enough purchase on the map to pick up clams and jump them in. But with one player locked to a wall, unable to do anything but hide, and at least one other player jumping to the basket and likely going down, there wouldn't be a lot of firepower to use to access clams or protect the player on the wall. It'd be more of a, I tried to make it work for a YouTube video strat than a Jackpot will be trying this in their next set against FT win strat. But we'll never really know for sure because as it turns out, it doesn't work that way. Normally, when you super jump to someone who's on a wall, it puts you in their last grounded position. And that's actually how it works after your Kraken ends, even if you were in Kraken form when you last touched the ground. You can see here that I initiate Kraken right below the basket, but once I transform back, instead of landing at the basket, Devi lands on my last grounded position, which is right next to this building, where I made contact with the wall. You could still theoretically use this to create one of those desynced super jump locations if there's a point where you can attach to a wall that happens to be in range of a clam basket. But that's a mechanic that's possible to execute without using the Kraken at all. Here I am just swimming into this wall normally and riding the wall all the way up, and you can see that Devi is still able to jump all the way over there by targeting me. Incidentally, the better way to do this on this map is actually by going from the top of the rail, because then there isn't anything in the way of the clam throw. You can also use the desynced jump point even if the last grounded position isn't near the basket for as long as the Kraken user is still big. You could, for example, reduce the number of players lost from a typical clam super jump by having the jump target pop Kraken under the basket to give the jump and then promptly retreat to their own side of the map, leaving the jumper to jump to that Kraken's initiation point and get splatted, but allowing the jump target to regroup with the team and defend or reload for another offensive play. That way, you could make a single power clam jump play in the middle of an ongoing push, while 3 players are always available to fight, with the jumper defending until the jump happens, and the jump target defending after the jump happens, while the jumper respawns, preferably with Tacticooler. There are some other ideas of how you might layer these tactics with other weapons. Maybe you sneak a big bubbler user in, a junior maybe, pop a big bubbler under basket, jump the Kraken into the big bubbler, activate Kraken under the basket, and now, even after the big bubbler gets shredded, there's still a super jump point under the basket until the Kraken is finished. I personally think most of these strategies are pretty impractical for competitive play. Even the strongest ideas out of these still involve getting a Kraken user all the way to the enemy basket without using the Kraken or getting splatted, and maintaining a power clam to jump into it. Against a coordinated team, that's not an easy thing to do, and it's probably a safer bet to push in conventionally, using the whole team to fight, instead of hoping your Kraken user can be sneaky enough to get in undetected while the rest of your team gets 4v3'd. Still, I wanted to go over these mechanics because the way to counter gimmick strategies is to know what their weaknesses are and to be able to recognize them in progress so you can exploit those weaknesses in time. Have fun in the new and improved Clam Blitz.